Cunningham, hand off Johnson, into a triple team, out to Clark, 3 more!
Carolina.
Clark fire away and hits a 3!
Just 72 hours ago, Caitlin Clark looked like a player who could barely make it up and down the court without feeling every step. You could see the discomfort written all over her face. Her back had completely tightened up. The concern around the fever was growing by the hour, and fans were starting to wonder whether this was going to become a bigger issue than anyone expected. The situation got serious enough that she ended up sitting out the entire Portland game. No minutes, no appearance, just watching from the sidelines while questions continued to pile up. Then, right before tip-off against Golden State, one reporter decided to ask the question that everybody in the building wanted answered. A microphone was pushed in front of Stephanie White, and the question was direct and simple. Coach, what's the latest on Caitlin Clark's back?
Is she injured? I guess is the fair question. Is she injured? Or is it something other than it?
What happened next was honestly one of the most uncomfortable pregame moments we've seen from a head coach all season. Stephanie White looked into the cameras and delivered an answer that somehow lasted long enough to sound important while revealing absolutely nothing. It was one of those classic coach responses where every sentence feels carefully constructed to avoid giving away any real information. The words were there, but the clarity wasn't. The body language was even more telling. She looked uncomfortable. She looked cautious. She looked like someone trying to navigate a situation she either didn't fully want to discuss or simply wasn't prepared to explain publicly. It was vague. It was awkward. And it immediately became one of the biggest storylines heading into the game.
Is she injured? I guess is the fair question. Is she injured? Or is it something other than an injury?
Her back is sore.
Then Caitlin Clark stepped onto that hardwood. Golden State came out aggressive and quickly built an 8-point lead. For a brief moment, it looked like the Valkyries might be in position to take control of the night. But what happened after that completely changed the conversation. What unfolded wasn't just a strong performance. It wasn't even just a great performance. It was the loudest individual statement we've seen from any player during the 2026 WNBA season so far. The energy inside the arena shifted. The momentum flipped. And once Clark found her rhythm, it became obvious that something special was about to happen.
And all on that defensive possession, Clark, from another stratosphere!
The final numbers tell part of the story, but they still don't fully capture what this performance felt like in real time. 22 points, 9 assists, 4 3-pointers, a technical foul, a flagrant foul, and a third-quarter explosion that completely changed the game. Indiana outscored Golden State 29-17 during that stretch, and by the time the Valkyries realized what was happening, the game had already slipped away from them. Every possession felt like Clark was turning up the pressure. Every big shot felt like it carried extra weight. And that third-quarter takeover ended up being the stretch that buried Golden State's hopes and completely transformed the direction of the night.
To their left hand.
Clark just spins away from Hayes, fades, fires and hits.
What a tough two.
The Indiana Fever eventually pulled away with a 90-82 victory. But this game was about much more than just another number in the win column. This was a statement. This was Caitlin Clark walking back onto the floor after days of uncertainty and reminding everybody exactly who she is. Every fan inside Gainbridge Fieldhouse saw it. Every coach around the league saw it. Every player paying attention saw it. The message could not have been clearer. When Caitlin Clark is healthy and playing with confidence, she changes everything. She changes defensive game plans. She changes the pace of games. She changes the energy inside arenas. And on this night, she reminded the entire WNBA exactly what kind of superstar they're dealing with.
Matchup starting to heat up. Clark on the drive, draws the foul, banks it home, and one for Caitlin Clark.
Welcome back to Court Queens, where we break down the biggest stories in women's basketball without the spin and without the excuses. If you love detailed game analysis, WNBA news, Caitlin Clark coverage, and everything happening around the league, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit that like button, and let us know your thoughts in the comments below. We cover every major matchup, every major storyline, and every major moment. Now let's get right into this one because there is a lot to unpack.
Steph, what is your reaction to getting a warning from the league as a team for the injury report involving Caitlin? Medical question, we can defer that to the medical team. We, to my knowledge, don't have access to talk to them.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't disclose anything that's not already disclosed by our medical team, by our franchise.
Let's start with Stephanie White's pregame press conference, because that moment ended up setting the stage for everything that followed. Before the game, a reporter asked what should have been a pretty straightforward question. How was Caitlin Clark feeling physically? What kind of condition was she in heading into the matchup? And what should fans realistically expect to see from her on the court? Instead of providing a direct answer, White delivered what can only be described as a masterclass in saying a lot while revealing very little. She talked about monitoring the situation. She talked about relying on the medical staff. She talked about being cautious and making smart decisions. But she never actually answered the question. She didn't tell everyone Clark was fully healthy. She didn't say Clark would have restrictions. She didn't offer any meaningful details about what fans should expect. The entire response felt like it was designed to keep the situation as unclear as possible. And honestly, the body language made it even more noticeable. The hesitation, the pauses, the awkward expressions, everything about it suggested there was something she didn't want to publicly discuss. That immediately became a major talking point heading into tip-off. Fans were wondering if Clark was truly ready. Analysts were debating how much she would play. Opposing coaches were probably asking themselves the same questions. Which makes what happened afterward even more incredible. Because if there were any concerns about Clark's condition before the game, she completely erased them the moment the action started.
Exactly what happened there as Clark bounces inside for Boston.
Patience.
Because whatever was actually going on with that back, whether she was completely healed, still dealing with discomfort, or simply playing through pain because that's what competitors do, it certainly didn't show once the game got rolling. From the opening minutes, Clark looked like someone who had spent an entire week waiting to get back on the floor. There was no hesitation. There was no visible fear of movement. There was no cautious approach. There was no sign of someone trying to ease back into action. Instead, it looked like a player who had been forced to sit still and was finally being allowed to do what she loves again. She attacked the game aggressively. She pushed the pace. She trusted her body. She trusted her instincts. And she played with the kind of confidence that only elite competitors possess. There were no minute restrictions slowing her down. There was no obvious effort to manage her workload. There was no indication that Indiana planned to treat her differently. It was simply Caitlin Clark unleashed. Meanwhile, Golden State entered the game believing they had a legitimate opportunity. They saw a fever team dealing with injury concerns. They saw uncertainty surrounding Clark's status. And they likely felt this was a great chance to steal a road win. The problem was that they were about to run into a version of Caitlin Clark that looked determined to remind everyone why she's one of the most dangerous players in basketball. And once that version showed up, everything changed.
Clark, oh, beautiful find! Inside for Cunningham! And one!
That opportunity Golden State thought they had? Looking back, it probably never really existed. They just didn't know it yet. The opening quarter felt exactly like what you'd expect from two teams trying to establish themselves early. Both sides were feeling each other out. Neither team was willing to give much away. Indiana managed to edge the first quarter 19-18, and at that point nothing suggested the fireworks that were waiting around the corner. Clark wasn't forcing anything. She wasn't trying to prove her back was healthy with highlight plays. She wasn't hunting shots just to make a statement. Instead, she was simply playing basketball. Reading the defense, making the correct pass, taking what the game gave her, building confidence possession by possession. And honestly, for someone returning from a physical setback, she looked remarkably comfortable. Meanwhile, Golden State came prepared. They moved the ball well. They attacked gaps in Indiana's defense. They executed their game plan with discipline. Tiffany Hayes got involved early and gave Indiana problems throughout the opening stretch. The Valkyries' defense also made life difficult for Clark. Every touch was contested. Every possession required effort. Every scoring opportunity had to be earned. Nothing came easy. At the end of the first quarter, it remained a one-point game. Completely competitive. Completely undecided. Exactly the kind of game both teams expected. Then came the second quarter. And that's where the entire story nearly took a very different turn.
Starting a game out relatively fast, and then in the second quarter, we give up a lead. Caitlin Clark and the Fever showed out in the third quarter with a 29-17 showing. The big three showed up. Aliyah Boston, 20 points on 8 of 15. 16 boards, 3 blocks.
Golden State absolutely won the second quarter. The Valkyries outscored Indiana 26-18 and completely flipped the momentum of the game. Their bench came alive. Their energy increased. And suddenly Indiana looked like the team searching for answers. Caitlin Chin provided a huge spark off the bench. Tiffany Hayes continued finding openings and creating offense. By the end of the night, Golden State's reserves would contribute 43 bench points, a number that highlights just how important their second unit was. For a stretch, Indiana simply couldn't find solutions. Defensive rotations were breaking down. Switches weren't being executed cleanly. The offense lost some of the rhythm that had powered the Fever during their recent winning streak. Golden State sensed an opportunity and attacked it. By the middle of the second quarter, the Valkyries had built an 8-point lead, their largest advantage of the game. And you could feel the change inside the building. The crowd that had been buzzing about Clark's return got noticeably quieter. Questions started creeping in. Was Clark fully healthy? Was Indiana ready for this challenge? Could Golden State actually pull off the upset? Clark continued making plays. The passes were still there. The reads were still elite. But Golden State's defensive strategy was forcing her to work harder for every inch of space. Every possession felt contested. Every advantage had to be earned. And when Indiana desperately needed somebody to step forward and shift momentum, nobody could quite deliver. By halftime, Golden State held the lead. The atmosphere had completely changed. The excitement surrounding Clark's return had been replaced by concern. After all, this was supposed to be a healthy Caitlin Clark returning to action. Instead, Indiana was trailing at home. The doubts were beginning to surface. The concerns were legitimate. Then halftime ended, and Caitlin Clark delivered the quarter that changed everything. The third quarter wasn't just good. It wasn't just dominant. It was a complete takeover. Indiana exploded for 29 points while holding Golden State to only 17. The moment the second half began, you could see the difference. Clark's body language had changed. The aggression was different. The urgency was different. She wasn't easing into possessions anymore. She was attacking them. Immediately. She pushed the pace in transition before Golden State could get organized. She forced defenders into uncomfortable positions. She created opportunities before the defense even had a chance to react. Then the three-pointers started falling. The first one hit, and the crowd erupted. The second one raised the noise level even higher. Every possession after that felt like the arena was waiting for something special to happen. And Clark kept delivering.
May have been the night that Caitlin Clark put the league on notice. But the Fever got the win, and Caitlin Clark, once again, pretty much put this team on her back and rode it to victory.
One of those third-quarter threes felt like the exact moment the game slipped away from Golden State. You know the type of shot. The kind where the ball leaves a superstar's hands and everybody in the building already knows the result. The crowd exploded. Golden State immediately called timeout. They needed answers. They needed adjustments. They needed something. Nothing worked. On Indiana's next major possession, Clark attacked the basket, drew contact, and calmly stepped to the free throw line like she completely owned the moment. She knocked down the free throws. Golden State missed on the other end. And before the net had even stopped moving, Clark was already pushing the pace again. Then came the technical foul. Whether fans agree with the call or not isn't really the point. The point is what happened afterward. Most players allow moments like that to affect them. They get distracted. They start arguing. They lose focus. Clark did the opposite. She immediately moved on. She organized the next possession. She made the next basketball play. And she never allowed the situation to take her out of rhythm. Shortly after that came the flagrant foul. 2 emotional moments. 2 official penalties. 2 opportunities for frustration to derail her night. Instead, she kept attacking. She kept creating. She kept scoring. That's the trade-off with elite competitors. The same fire that sometimes gets them into trouble is often the exact same fire that makes them great. You don't get one without the other. And during that third quarter, that competitive fire completely overwhelmed Golden State. Aliyah Boston became one of the biggest beneficiaries. As defenses collapsed toward Clark, Boston consistently found space near the basket. Clark created chaos. Boston finished the possessions. It became a perfect partnership. Clark drawing attention. Boston collecting easy opportunities. Clark controlling the pace. Boston dominating inside. By the end of the quarter, Indiana had completely seized control. Golden State managed only 17 points after scoring 26 in the second quarter. The game had flipped, and everyone watching knew it. The fourth quarter became about finishing the job. Indiana outscored Golden State 24-21 and never really looked threatened. There was no need for desperation. No need for heroics. The Fever were in control. Clark shifted into facilitator mode. Boston continued controlling the paint. And Kelsey Mitchell quietly delivered one of the most important performances of the night. Mitchell attacked relentlessly. Even when her outside shot wasn't perfect, she found ways to impact the game. She earned trip after trip to the free throw line and converted every single opportunity. 11 for 11. Perfect. 19 points built through toughness, aggression, and smart decision-making. That's what winning players do. When one part of their game isn't clicking, they find another way to help their team win. Golden State continued fighting. Veronica Burton battled until the final buzzer and finished with 17 points. Tiffany Hayes added 19 of her own on efficient shooting. But ultimately, the Valkyries couldn't overcome the gap in star power. Their starting lineup struggled from the floor. And against a team with Clark, Boston, and Mitchell playing at this level, that simply wasn't going to be enough. Final score: Indiana Fever 90, Golden State Valkyries 82. And Caitlin Clark's stat line was every bit as impressive as it felt while watching it unfold. 22 points, 9 assists, for made three-pointers, 4 of 9 from deep, multiple momentum-shifting plays, a technical, a flagrant, and complete control of the game when it mattered most. Perhaps the most important number was that 4 of 9 shooting from beyond the arc. Because early in the season, teams were daring Clark to beat them from outside. Defenses were backing off, packing the paint, and challenging her shot. That strategy is becoming harder and harder to justify. For 3 straight games, Clark has looked increasingly comfortable from long range. And if that trend continues, defensive coordinators around the league are going to have major problems. Then there are the assists. 9 more in this game. 22 combined across her last 2 contests. Those aren't empty numbers. Those are game-changing plays. Clark sees passing windows before they fully develop. She anticipates movement before defenders recognize it. She's not just creating offense. She's orchestrating it. The turnovers remain one area that still needs attention. Against elite defensive teams, those mistakes can become costly. And with the New York Liberty coming up next, every possession will matter. But when you zoom out and look at the bigger picture, Indiana has plenty of reasons to be excited. The Fever sit at 5-2. Both losses came in overtime. The wins have become increasingly convincing. Aliyah Boston continues stacking dominant performances. Kelsey Mitchell continues producing. The overall structure of the team is improving. And most importantly, Caitlin Clark looks like Caitlin Clark again. Remember how this story started. Stephanie White standing in front of reporters, looking uncomfortable while trying to answer questions about Clark's back. Nobody really knew what to expect. A few hours later, Clark answered every question herself. Not with words. Not with explanations. Not with medical updates. With basketball. 40 minutes of elite basketball. 4 three-pointers. 9 assists. A third-quarter explosion that completely changed the game. A performance that reminded everyone why arenas come alive when she has the ball in her hands. Now the focus shifts to the next challenge. The New York Liberty. A true measuring stick matchup. A game that will tell us even more about where Indiana stands. But after what we witnessed against Golden State, one thing is impossible to ignore. Caitlin Clark sent a message to the entire WNBA. The message was loud. The message was clear. And the message was impossible to miss. She's back. Not partially back. Not working her way back. Completely back. And that's something the rest of the league should be paying very close attention to.